Hey, want a cookie? Oh, I know you just ate, so you're craving something a little sweet. Besides, one cookie isn't gonna kill you. How about half? Just a bite? Bite it. Bite it. Bite it.
Food noise isn't fair, but Mochi Health is. Your affordable GLP-1 source that puts you on a path to successful weight loss by quieting food noise.
Bite it.
Shh. Learn more at joinmochi.com. Mochi members have access to licensed physicians and nutritionists. Results may vary.
We sit down at the table, I get my notebook out, and Morgan Freeman looked over the table at me. He said, "Put the notebook away. I just need you to listen to me right now. When you leave LA, you're going to go back to Portland and you're going to shut that restaurant business down. That's what you're going to do." And I can still feel myself, welling up. I was still like, and it's been a long time since we had that conversation. And it's like, I still get goosebumps and I still get chills and I still well up.
Welcome to Paper Napkin Wisdom, where we share pearls of wisdom shared by some of the world's top entrepreneurs, leaders, and difference makers. Here's your host, Govind Jayaraman.
Hi, I'm Govind Jayaraman, and this is Paper Napkin Wisdom, episode 351. You know, there are moments in your life where you can feel something shifting, even if you can't quite explain it yet. Moments where the plan you once felt so certain about starts to feel a little less clear, maybe even confining. If you've ever wondered whether you're on the right path or whether you're questioning what happens when things don't go according to plan, you might begin to notice that the real opportunity isn't always where you expect it to be. And sometimes what looks like a detour is actually an opening. So in this conversation, I sit down with Monique Hayward. She is a dynamic leader, an entrepreneur, and someone who has navigated a career across corporate, hospitality, and innovation in a way that just might change how you think about progress itself. And as you listen, you may start to recognize how the idea of having it all figured out might not be the goal at all. In fact, you might even begin to consider where in your own life there's an opportunity to hold a little less tightly to the plan, but maybe even explore what becomes possible when you allow yourself to shift. So as you settle in, just notice what stands out for you, because somewhere in this conversation there may be a thought, a moment, or even a simple idea that stays with you. Let's dive in. Monique Hayward, welcome to Paper Napkin Wisdom. Excited to have you here today.
It's my pleasure. Thank you so much for the invitation. I'm excited about this conversation. I've been looking forward to it for weeks and weeks now.
Yeah, we booked this a long time ago, so this is going to be fun.
Oh, definitely.
And listen, if for those of you listening, yes, my voice is not normal. It's still Govind here. I'm just not 100%. Just getting over a little bit of a cough. So Monique, you shared a really great paper napkin, and I know you've got a really dynamic story, and I'm really looking forward to diving into this with you. But your napkin is, your power isn't your plan, it's in your pivot. Why did you share that with me?
I think there are a couple of things that come to mind when I think about how careers evolve over time. I think a lot of us, when we're early in our careers, just getting out of school, thinking about how things should take shape, we think about it in terms of kind of a linear progression. If I take this job, then, and I do a really good job here, I'll set myself up for promotion to the next level and, kind of go from there. Whereas the way that the world really works is that it doesn't always happen that way. Sometimes you have to think about where you have the opportunity to take a little bit of a detour or do something that wasn't quite in your plan as you might have imagined it. And you have to set yourself up for possibility and be open to the fact that something might just come your way that might be even a better opportunity that you weren't even looking for. And so when I say that the power is not in the plan, is in the pivot, it's in how do you actually think about how you set yourself up for that opportunity so that in case you do need to shift, and you need to do it quickly, you need to do it efficiently, and you need to do it purposefully, then you're ready for that and you're setting yourself up for success.
Yeah, I like that. And I think a lot of us who are entrepreneurs get
ask the story. Well, how did you get into doing what you're doing now? And we kind of give them this, nonchalant, meandering answer, sort of, I never would have seen this coming together this way. One thing led to another, and I'm here. Some version of, I kind of happened. There was an opportunity, and I followed it, and it got here. And that, I think that's what you're saying, right?
Yeah. And also, let me tell you the story about how I became an entrepreneur. I actually had a full-time job. I mean, I didn't really need to go down the path of starting my own business. I actually decided that I wanted to do something that was a little bit outside of my comfort zone in high technology. At the time, I was about 34, 35 years old. And I was like, I went and got an MBA for a reason. I want to, kind of work those muscles a little bit more. And there was, just something a little confining about, being in high technology marketing and communications and, kind of always implementing somebody else's strategy, somebody else's plan, somebody else's expectations of what success would look like. And so I actually took inspiration from my grandmother. My grandmother actually worked as a nurse in a hospital in New York City. And she would work the night shift, and she would drive from Queens into Manhattan and run her beauty shop business during the day. And then at the end of the day, she would close up shop, go home to her apartment in the Bronx, sleep for a few hours, and then go back to Queens to do her nursing job. And she did this for many, many years. And so as I was thinking about, kind of like the idea of having my corporate career alongside an entrepreneurial career, I was like, you know what, if my grandmother could put in that kind of, sacrifice and, think about how to balance the two things, I could certainly do it. And so I decided that I would do, of all things, Govin, a restaurant.
So we're laughing, and I'm laughing, and anybody. So if you're in the restaurant business, my apologies.
Yeah.
But I used to always tell my friends that if you ever see me think about starting a restaurant business, just give me a shovel. I'll dig a hole. I can put all my money in it and then cover it back up again. I have about as much chance of turning that into a return.
Tell me about it.
And that's a tough business, right?
Yes, they are very tough businesses. And I read Kitchen Confidential, Anthony Bourdain's famous book. And there was a chapter in there about the profile of the restaurant owner. And he actually had a little bit of a survey in the book where he said, these are the criteria that you need to assess against yourself if you want to own a restaurant. And I was right on the borderline of the person who should or should not own a restaurant business. And so I decided to go for it. And you're right. I mean, the restaurants are tough. There's single digit margins at best. There's a lot of drama. There's a reason why I tell people all the time that restaurants make such great reality television, right? Because there is definitely a lot of drama. And but the thing about a restaurant business, Govin, is that it teaches you everything about entrepreneurship because you have to deal with everything on the spectrum, from how to hire the best employees and retain them in an environment where, people come and go, 70, 80% turnover rate, right? You have leases and landlords that you have to deal with. You deal with construction projects if you're building a place. You deal with vendors and you deal with salespeople, right? I mean, it's constant. You get such an education, rules and regulations, state and local government regs, right? Like all that stuff that you deal with a restaurant. It's quite the microcosm, if you will, for entrepreneurship from front to back, right? I mean, there's just, every aspect of how to run a business presents itself when you own a restaurant. And so that was how I learned, kind of the hard way, how to be an entrepreneur.
One of the things I think is really interesting about restaurant businesses, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, Monique, on this, and my feeling from the outside looking in, it's the closest business to running a pro sports team because you literally could win or lose a day,
Yes.
right? Every day is a new day. Every day starts 0-0, and you can win or lose the day in that business. And it's about stringing the W's together, isn't it?
Yes, it is.
I mean, everybody's going to say, oh, my business is like that too. But the restaurant business is really unique in the sense that it really is sort of like this very clean slate every single day where everything starts from scratch. Projects very rarely last from day to day. I mean, maybe a broth does, but other than that, there isn't a lot, right?
No, you're absolutely right. Yeah, every day is a new day. And that's how I used to coach my staff, right? Because they would get upset about, a customer situation that might have come up or, something that the kitchen might have screwed up or whatever. And, the next day, like you said, we start over. The
Security program on spreadsheets, new regulations piling up, and audit dread? It's time for Vanta. Vanta automates security and compliance, brings evidence into one place, and cuts audit prep by 82%. Less manual work, clearer visibility, faster deals, zero chaos. Call it compliance or call it compliance. Get it? Join the 15,000 companies using Vanta to prove trust. Go to vanta.com/calm.
score is 0-0. The thing, too, about restaurants as well is that there's so much that could get in the way of you being successful in delivering the experience that you imagine as an entrepreneur. So there are so many steps of service, if you will, that have to come together in order for the food to come out of the kitchen and for it to land in front of someone, as they get ready to enjoy it. There's so many things, so many variables that could present themselves and change that equation on the fly. And that's what really makes it, a little treacherous. And then,
Yeah,
like
so
you said, though, if it didn't go as planned that night, you got tomorrow to make up.
that's right. Yeah, it always starts over tomorrow. So let's do this origin story a little bit, Monique. Let's play this out. So
Yeah.
you're inspired by your grandmother who goes from the Bronx to Queens to work, and then from Queens to Manhattan to run her beauty business. Which, listen, if you're just not familiar with the geography of this, the Bronx to Queens is 45 minutes to an hour.
Exactly.
Queens to Manhattan at that time of day, if you're doing it faster than an hour, you're breaking some land speed records. And then Manhattan back to the Bronx, half hour, 45 minutes. So you're talking about a 3-hour daily commute as you run that circuit, right? Am I wrong?
No, you're not wrong at all. No, my grandmother was doing this. Yeah, she was driving. She wasn't on subway or any of that, right? Yeah, she had her car and then she was doing her route. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. So you're inspired by her, and that's an inspirational, story by itself. And so you have this New York background, but your restaurant is not in New York when you start off.
No. So let me back up a little bit. I'm originally from New York City, but I split my childhood between there and Columbia, South Carolina. And then when I graduated from high school, I went to college at the University of Maryland, and I got a journalism degree from there. And then I hopped over to Cleveland, Ohio, to go to Case Western Reserve University. And I got my MBA in marketing. And then I got my first job out of grad school in Beaverton, Oregon. And I sure enough said Oregon at the time because I'm an East Coaster, right? But I got corrected instantly when I got here. It's Oregon. Let's get it right.
Yeah.
And so I took a job with a company called Tektronix. And I started my career as a marketing and communication specialist at this test and measurement company. And then from there, I went to Intel. And I worked at Intel for 22 years. And the way that I like to describe my career at Intel is that I moved around to move up. And so in 22 years, I worked in every part of the business with the exception of sales, finance, and manufacturing. Every other part of the business I worked in. And then at that time when I was at Intel was when I started my restaurant business and, started to really dive into entrepreneurship. And so I left Intel after 22 years and then took a couple of jobs at Microsoft. And I was there at Microsoft for about 4 years. And so, and while I was actually in transition between Intel and Microsoft, I started my current business that I have with a partner down in Phoenix, Arizona, and it's called Driscoll Cuisine and Cocktail Concepts. And it is a hospitality brand, and we focus on a personal chef service. We also have a vacation rental property that we call The Concept. That's a beautiful 3,000 square foot property that we host as a chef-driven, hospitality-forward experience for guests. And then there are two other businesses that I hope that we'll get a chance to talk about that. My business partner, Brian Driscoll, and I are conceiving right now as we speak. One, we're moving into non-alcoholic beverages because that is a huge opportunity as people are starting to evaluate or even reevaluate their relationship with alcohol. And then my other business that Brian and I are working on together is an AI business, and it is called Tableside, and it is an AI hospitality coach. And so going back to the restaurant scenarios, right? So imagine that, you're a server or you're a hostess or you're a bartender at a restaurant, and you get presented with a challenging guest situation and you need to have some coaching, and your manager is not available, or you have an opportunity actually in a training situation to sit down and kind of go through these kinds of scenarios to improve your skills and improve your ability as a front of house staff member. You can use this hospitality coach to enter guest scenarios and you'll get the coaching back.
That's great. And again, I think this goes back sort of full circle to what we were talking about earlier on. It's like, how do you find your way there?
Yeah.
And it's interesting, though, that you are marrying your technology background with Intel and Microsoft and Tektronix, that journey now back into hospitality and how sort of putting them all in the blender together using another, sort of kitchen reference. So
Put it all in the blender.
yeah. So let's talk about this. So you went from Intel to starting this restaurant in Beaverton, Oregon, which is obviously quite a departure. How did that go? What was that shift like? I mean,
Yeah, I
what did
still
it feel
held
like
on
at
to
the
my
beginning?
job at Intel. So I was doing my Intel gig, during the day, and I
Mhm.
had, a team of people who were running the restaurant with me. And so I would, go from my day job over to my restaurant and, just make sure that everything was, going the way that it should. Um, it was challenging on a number of different fronts. As we described, right, restaurants are very tough businesses just to begin with, right? And then the type of business that I decided to launch was a restaurant that was, I think, a little bit ahead of its time. Right? So I identified a niche between super duper high end fine dining and fast casual. And so I created this niche for a restaurant that was placed in the suburbs, that you didn't have to go downtown and you would get a fantastic experience, but you wouldn't have to pay a super duper high price point. So my place was called Dessert Noir Cafe and Bar. And so I leaned in on the dessert and alcohol, or the dessert and cocktail trend, I should say, at the time. This was in the early 2000s. So think, 2004, 2005, 2006. And I held on to the restaurant actually for about 4.5, almost 5 years, which is a lifetime in the restaurant business.
Time.
Most of these don't even make it beyond 2 years, right? So for me to have it for almost 5 is like crazy. Yeah. And so, anyway, so it was really successful, Govind, for the first 2 years, right? Like, and when I say successful, ladies and gentlemen in the audience, I mean break even.
Yeah.
But the last 2 years were super challenging. And that was because we ran into the Great Recession, the financial crisis, the bottom of the housing market, right? I mean, it was just crazy. And as entrepreneurs who are listening, right, will certainly relate to, we as entrepreneurs are nothing if not optimistic. Like, we think that, change is going to come. Like, Barack Obama got elected to the White House. And I was like, okay, we're going to push through this. Everything is going to be just fine. Right.
Right.
And it wasn't just fine. I probably, again, in looking back and thinking about the pivot, right, it was like I probably held on to the business about 6 months too long because I was being hopeful and optimistic and not being, realistic enough about where the market was, where the economy was, and how my customers, were making decisions about their discretionary income, right? And making sure that they were going to hold on to their jobs and not, because that's like the first thing that gets cut, right? Is like when you gotta like hunker down, first thing you do is you stop going out to eat. And, perhaps you're a little overweight anyway and you need to lose 10 pounds. So you know what?
Dessert and cocktails are the first things to go.
My health.
Right. So let's talk about this for a second, and let's go back to your napkin, because I think this is really profound. The power is in the plan. It's in your pivot. And you talk about how you sort of learned that by maybe sticking with your plan a little bit longer than you felt, looking back at it, that you could have. So it's also in finding your pivot, there's a sensitivity to receiving feedback that's important too, right? So being open to the feedback that's around you, and if we're so
Look at him, eating whatever he wants, never gaining a pound. While I'm stuck with the boring special and can't lose an ounce.
How's your lunch, man?
Amazing. Yours?
So good.
Oh, I'm so happy for you.
Cool, buddy.
Weight loss isn't fair, but Mochi Health is. The affordable GLP-1 source that can fix your frustration with food.
So, same time next week?
No!
Definitely.
And your friends. Learn more at joinmochi.com. Mochi members have access to licensed physicians and nutritionists. Results may vary.
committed to the plan, we're kind of closed off, aren't we?
Yes, we are. And, I'm glad that you said feedback, because not only do you need to be sensing what's going on in the environment, in the macroeconomic environment, in the geopolitical environment, and, what's going on just even in your own hometown, like on the micro level, you also need to have people who will speak truth to you and call you out on your blind spots and help you strategize about what is the right opportunity for you to be pursuing. And even if that means walking away from something that you put your heart, your soul, and your life and a good chunk of your money into, it would probably be the best thing for you to do is to just let that go. And I'll tell you a story. So one of my mentors is Morgan Freeman. And he actually was someone who I had reached out to at the time that I was kind of thinking about what was I going to do? Was I going to stick with the plan with this restaurant? Or was I, just going to shut it down? I was, again, in that phase of, probably holding on to it too long. And so I recognized that I needed to have some more wisdom and some more guidance, outside of my brain and outside of my immediate advisors. And so I called him up and I asked him for a meeting. And so he happened to be in Los Angeles at the time. And he said, if you can get down to LA, we can meet. And so I got myself on a plane from Portland down to LA. And I met with Morgan, and I showed up, Govin, with my notebook. I'm very organized for people who know, right? So I had thought about the plan. I thought about the way that the meeting was going to go with him. I thought about everything I wanted to cover. I showed up with my notebook, and so I met him at a home where he was staying in LA. And I walk in, give him a big hug, and we sit down at the table. I get my notebook out, and Morgan Freeman looked over the table at me. He said, "Put the notebook away. I just need you to listen to me right now." Oh, okay. So, and everybody knows the voice, right? So when
I was imagining the voice. No, so just so we're clear, when Monique is dropping the name Morgan Freeman, you mean the great Morgan Freeman.
Yes, the great Morgan Freeman, the Oscar winner.
So I'm picturing him sternly looking across this table in that in his great voice saying,
"Yes,
I put the notebook away."
Yes, put the notebook away, and the pacing, right?
Yeah.
And he said, "I just need you to listen." And so I sat there very dutifully. and he said,
as that voice would do to you.
Yes, absolutely. And he looked over at me and he said, "Young lady, I'm going to share 3 things with you, 3 points that I need you to really consider about where you are in your life, in your career, and with this business." He said, "Number 1, that business is not going to define you long term." Okay. Number 2, you have a job. He's stating the obvious, right? You have a job. And maybe you want to think about where you are in your career at Intel and how you might lean into that a little bit more, because back to point number one, this restaurant business is not going to define you long term. And then number three, you have a husband. Think about what stress and craziness you have wrought upon your personal life and, everything that has been going on. It's time to, really think about where it is you have to prioritize and really get serious about getting back to some semblance of normalcy in your life, because this is making you crazy. And and I just looked at him like, oh, I was sort of thinking that I would keep going. And he's like, no, when you leave LA, you're going to go back to Portland and you're going to shut that restaurant business down. That's what you're going to do. And I can still feel myself, welling up. I was still like, and it's been a long time since we had that conversation. And it's like, I still get goosebumps and I still get chills and I still well
if
up.
you're just listening to this
Yeah.
and not watching this video, you can, it almost looks like, it does me a great service, but it almost looks like you're revisiting that moment and looking at him saying these things to you because it was so powerful.
Yeah, it was very powerful. And then at the end of it, I just looked at him and said, okay, I think I know what I need to do.
Yes, Mr. Freeman.
Yes, absolutely. And then he said, what would you like for lunch?
Yeah, that sounds
And then we
about right.
had a nice I said, I think I might want a salad. I don't know. I'm like, oh my God, my life is going to completely, again, take a huge pivot. And so sure enough, I got myself back on a plane, back up to Portland after having that meeting with him in Los Angeles. And within 2 weeks, that restaurant was gone. And I tell you, it set me free.
Let's talk about this because you slipped in very quickly.
Yeah.
You need to have feedback. We talked about feedback, the value of feedback, and the need to have it. And in your case, it came from a legendary person, not just in acting and in cinema, but he's got a great persona that extends beyond that. And it doesn't surprise me at all after hearing about him, the kinds of things that he would do, that he would mentor people. And I'm sure you've got a great story about how you connected with him.
Yeah.
But not all of us have Morgan Freemans asking us to come visit them in LA. But we have people that will speak truth to us, don't we?
Absolutely.
And we need to listen to them, don't we?
Absolutely. Absolutely. No, I tell people all the time that, you not everybody gets to have an A-list actor, in their network and call that person a friend and a mentor. Definitely not. But yes, like you said, there are people who you need to make sure are in your circle, who I like to describe as your personal board of directors, right? Make sure that you have people who can advise you from various angles of the businesses that you are engaged in, the decisions that you have to make, the strategies that you're trying to align. So I have one of my girlfriends from graduate school is an entrepreneur. Her family owned a publishing company. They're really established in Ohio. They're actually big in politics as well. And so she and I get on the phone and we talk through our quote unquote strategery, right? So whenever I have, something that is a big decision or a big play that I might want to, put into motion, something that, kind of gets me out of my comfort zone. She's the first person I think of and the first person I call, right? So you got to have a group of, I would say, 5 to 6 people who know you well enough to tell it to you straight and not sugarcoat it and make you think about how you execute without a lot of emotion around it, because a lot of these things are emotional at the end of the day. You're on a spectrum all the time of how emotional I am versus how rational I am. Right.
Yeah. And pivoting in an emotional direction isn't also a very good idea.
No.
But, I love this idea and I'm going to play with this idea. You said not everybody has an A-list celebrity or A-list personality that is that is their mentor or that is in their personal board of advisors, you said that, but at the same time, we have A-list friends. We all have A-list friends. One of the things that we don't do with them, and sounds like you're very deliberately different about this, that we don't often empower them to give it to us straight. Now, the beauty of an A-lister like Morgan Freeman is he's not asking for permission. He doesn't care.
Yeah.
He doesn't care. He literally doesn't care whether or not you're going to give him permission. He's just going to do it. And that's great. But with our peers, with the people who are our friends, we do need to empower them, don't we?
Yeah. Oh, we do. We absolutely do. And that goes back to how you develop those relationships in the first place, right? It's about establishing trust, confidence, a mutually beneficial exchange. And that's the other thing, right? I mean, you got to show up for people as much as they show up for you. And it can't be lopsided. You can't be calling up people all the time, right? Looking for advice and counsel. You have to open up yourself to, making sure that you are as accessible and as available as the people in your network are to them as well.
Well, and you have to be helpable too. On the other side, you can't be the person who's all
Security program on spreadsheets, new regulations piling up, and audit dread? It's time for Vanta. Vanta automates security and compliance, brings evidence into one place, and cuts audit prep by 82%. Less manual work, clearer visibility, faster deals, zero chaos. Call it compliance or call it compliance. Get it? Join the 15,000 companies using Vanta to prove trust. Go to vanta.com/calm.
always pulling on the rope.
Yeah, absolutely.
You also need to show up vulnerably. Otherwise, really, this is just it's a non-paid coaching relationship, and that doesn't work either.
Yeah,
Because
exactly.
that energetic imbalance comes out with lacks
Definitely.
of clarity, doesn't it?
Yes, it does. It does. And, over the years, I have, kind of stuck with, again, kind of the same, 5 to 6 people who are my personal board of directors who I reach out to for these kinds of big decisions. And I sit on, quote unquote, their boards, right?
Yeah.
And they call me when they are, working through, working through plans, working through strategies, working through big decisions, right? Especially things that are career changing or that have the potential to either fail big or win big.
Yeah, and I think this is really important because you're all about the pivot, the pivot that brought you across the country, a pivot that brought you from tech to hospitality, back to tech, and now back to hospitality in a variety of different ways, and plus tech. So, in those pivots, it's really important to de-risk those opportunities for clarity with your friends. Let me ask you, for you, is this a scheduled thing or is it an ad hoc thing? Do you come together on some kind of scheduled basis or do you come together randomly?
I think it's more ad hoc as needed, right? Because everybody's so busy. Oh my gosh, it is so hard to do anything with busy people, trying to get calendars to align. I mean, I think about the 5 or 6 people who, like I said, I reach out to who are in my personal board directors. And if I tried to pull them all together at once, oh my gosh, we'd be waiting a year trying to find the right window of opportunity. So, but yeah, it's mostly ad hoc and it's mostly on a one-on-one basis, right? It's, I'll actually, have something that I need advice and counsel on. And then I will reach out to the 4 to 5, 6 people to get the various, kind of perspectives. And then the other thing that I would advise other folks, if they're, in this kind of situation and need to get advice and counsel, don't talk to too many people because then you start to get too much conflicting insight and perspective and counsel. So if you talk to, more than about 5 or 6 people, then you start to risk, diverging insights and opinions and perspectives. And then that just confuses you and paralyzes you, right?
Yeah, and analysis paralysis is absolutely
Totally.
a real thing.
Yeah.
I mean,
you don't need too much information. The other thing that I have learned over the years is that if you hear people say this all the time, right? If you hear it once, maybe, maybe not. You hear it twice, the same thing, the same kind of advice, the same kind of counsel, the same kind of insight. You hear it twice, you should probably, sort of get yourself perked up. But if you start hearing the same thing from different people, 3, 4, 5, then you've got something that you really should pay attention to. Those are warning lights, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. So what does Mr. Freeman think of the current businesses?
It's funny that you ask. It's funny. I had a conversation with him a couple years back and told him that I was going to be pivoting into more of a hospitality business that wasn't such, overhead, if you will, of a full-blown restaurant. And so what my business partner, Brian Driscoll, and I have is this personal chef service combined with the vacation property. And then, like I said earlier, we are extending our brand into non-alcoholic beverages and the AI hospitality coach. And so, so when I was sending a note to Morgan about this, he was like, "Good job." Not much else after that. Just like, "Hey, good job. Keep on keeping on, girl."
Yeah. Well, one of the things that I know, I do know from his bio, I think that he had at least one investment in a fine dining restaurant somewhere along the way too, right?
Yeah,
So
exactly. And that's how, in fact, we kind of connected, and why I asked him to be one of my mentors at the time. He was doing a lot of work with Intel many years ago, and I got the opportunity to work with him at Intel. I hired him for an event that we did, and I got to be kind of his PA for the day. And so he was impressed enough with me and what I was doing and what I was bringing to the table that he wanted to strike up a conversation with me. And I did my super sleuth thing on Morgan Freeman before the meetings, and I had learned a couple of things that I didn't know about him. Just being a fan. I mean, I hadn't, seen a whole lot of his movies. I mean, I wasn't a super fan, but, I always sort of knew that, whatever Morgan Freeman was in a movie, he was going to be good in it, even if the movie wasn't good. But I learned two things in my research before he did the event that I hired him to work for me. Number one was that he was in the restaurant business. He had actually invested in a couple places because, he's from Mississippi and he's very much into the blues. And in fact, he's got a program right now where symphonic orchestras are doing this Mississippi blues or Delta blues experience with symphonies. In fact, I saw it when it just came to Portland not too long ago, and it was a fantastic show. So big plug for that, Morgan Freeman's Symphonic Blues Experience.
That's great.
Yeah, so he actually made some significant investments in his hometown of Clarksdale, Mississippi, and in Memphis, Tennessee, to really kind of preserve the heritage of the blues. So that was one thing that I discovered. And then the other thing that was happening at the time was that he was doing a lot of work with Intel from a technology standpoint. He was really investing in emerging technologies in video and TV and stuff. And so we had that in common to talk through. And so I got bold and I asked him if he could take me on. And then the third thing that I had researched was that at the time he was going to be filming his next movie in Portland.
Wow.
Yeah. And I live in Beaverton, Oregon, which is right outside of Portland, suburb of Portland. And so I got really bold and I said, "Hey, when you come to Portland, how about we get together?" not even thinking like, "Oh yeah, I'm asking, Morgan Freeman to meet up with me for a drink." And sure enough,
I think that's amazing though. One of the things that I think is part of your pivot is asking. Right?
Yes.
Just ask. There's
Just
nothing
ask.
wrong with just asking.
There is nothing wrong with asking.
Now do your research also.
Absolutely.
But ask.
Yeah. And
what's that could happen?
The worst thing that could happen is that anybody could just say no, right? I mean, and you'll learn a lot in that no, and you'll learn a lot about, your own self in terms of, again, how you pitch, how you present yourself, how you tell your story. And I told my story in a way that was compelling enough, and that, he knew that I did just enough research to know, like, oh, wow, how did you know that I was going to be filming my next movie in Portland? Like, hey, you know what? I just know.
Right.
I figured it out. And then sure enough, he actually called me, and my restaurant was open at the time, and he brought his crew with him and had dinner at my restaurant. So that was also pretty awesome.
That's pretty cool. That's pretty cool. That's a picture you put on the wall for sure.
Oh yeah, definitely.
That's wonderful. What a great story. And this brings me to a story that came many years ago. A great friend of the show, his name is John Ruland, gave us a napkin. His napkin was, "What you appreciate appreciates." And what his sentiment was when you appreciate somebody, they appreciate and value not only in your own relationship with them, but in the world, right? That wave of gratitude that he created through his work, which was inspired, which inspired the napkin, but he was already part of what he was doing, turned into a business. Unfortunately, he was taken from us too early, about a year and a half ago, and since that time, we've been asking our guests to pay forward some appreciation and to sort of keep his legacy alive. So, who would you like to appreciate, Monique?
Okay, today I would like to appreciate my business partner, Brian Driscoll. He and I have been in business together with this amazing hospitality brand that we are trying to build since 2019. And talk about pivots, right? We have been, toiling, if you will, in this personal chef and, vacation retreat business that is wholly dependent on, people's discretionary income and their plans to travel to Phoenix, Arizona, and all kinds of other stuff that gets in the way of that. And so now we are actively trying to pivot to these new businesses. And if you know yourself as an entrepreneur, you don't know everything and you don't know what you don't know, right? And so as we embark on this journey into non-alcoholic beverages and into the AI hospitality coach business.
Look at him, eating whatever he wants, never gaining a pound. While I'm stuck with the boring special and can't lose an ounce.
How's your lunch, man?
Amazing. Yours?
So good.
Oh, I'm so happy for you.
Cool, buddy.
Weight loss isn't fair, but Mochi Health is. The affordable GLP-1 source that can fix your frustration with food.
So, same time next week?
No!
Definitely.
And your friends. Learn more at joinmochi.com. Mochi members have access to licensed physicians and nutritionists. Results may vary.
He is learning, and I'm learning as well. And we are doing our best to keep each other positive, to keep each other focused, and to keep each other supported. And I love and appreciate how he has stepped up to wanting to really expand our company and take it to a whole new level.
It's kind of brilliant. And I just want people to keep in mind of something. You talk about a partnership that started in 2019, just before there were some blips to travel and blips to hospitality that were pretty significant.
Yeah.
And,
in fact, my partner, Brian, quit his job at a restaurant where he was working as a server bartender. And he quit his job to do our business full time. And 4 months later was the pandemic.
That's right. Yeah. So that's a challenging period to build a partnership that has endured. So congratulations on that. And what a beautiful paper napkin. What a beautiful time together. Thank you, Monique.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
As you reflect on this conversation, you might start to notice something subtle. That moment you've been holding on just a little longer than you need to. That place where the plan still looks right on paper, but doesn't quite feel right anymore. And maybe, just maybe, there's a quiet knowing inside you that shift is already happening. Because what Monique shared isn't just about business or leadership. It's about awareness, timing, and trust. Trusting yourself enough to listen, trusting others enough to hear the truth, and trusting the process long enough or well enough to let go when it's time. And as you think about your own path, you might begin to see that the pivot isn't something to fear. It's something to follow. And here's something to sit with. Where in your life have you been invited to pivot, not because something is broken, but because something better is trying to emerge? And you don't have to have it all figured out. You just have to be willing to notice and take that next step. If this conversation sparks something for you, capture it. Write it down on a napkin and share it with somebody who might need to hear it, and post it with the hashtag Paper Napkin Wisdom. Because the more we share these ideas, the more we give others to permission to find their own. And who knows, the next step you take might not just change your direction, it might change everything. Until next time, make it a great day.